Welcome back. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from today? We'd love to know. Now get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's dive into today's gripping story. The first light of winter crept over the low hills, casting a pale glow across the frost-tipped grass. Officer Clara Hayes eased her patrol car along the narrow dirt road, the tires crunching softly over scattered gravel, her breath fogged faintly in the chill, mingling with the faint hum of the engine. Those early morning shifts had once been her favorite. Quiet, unhurried, the kind of hours when the town still slept and the world felt untouched. But now, silence meant something different. It wasn't just peace anymore. It was absence. 3 years had passed since the accident, a sudden brutal moment that had stolen her husband and their 7-year-old daughter. One moment they were hers. The next they were gone, leaving behind an empty house and a hollow ache that no sound could fill. Since then, the patrols had been her refuge. The steady rhythm of routine gave her something to hold on to, something to keep her from falling too far into the quiet. The radio sat silent beside her, no calls coming through. Outside, a thin fog clung to the earth, curling low across the fields and edging into the trees. Clara adjusted her grip on the steering wheel and took another slow breath, letting the scent of damp earth and pine fill her lungs. She told herself she was out here to keep the town safe. That was true. But somewhere beneath that, she knew she was also chasing moments. Small, fragile pieces of beauty that could still make her feel something other than loss. Up ahead, the road curved out of sight, disappearing into the pale gold haze of morning. Clara followed it without hurry, unaware that before the shift ended, the silence she carried might finally begin to break. The curve in the road opened onto a stretch of countryside so empty it looked almost painted. Frosted grass, bare trees, and not a single sign of movement. Clara was about to ease her foot back onto the gas when something caught her eye near the edge of the road. A shape, low, unmoving. She slowed, squinting through the thin fog. As the patrol car rolled closer, the shape lifted her head. It was a German shepherd, big though gaunt enough that her ribs pressed against her skin. Her coat was a tangle of mud and burrs clinging to her like the remnants of a hard season. One hind leg moved stiffly, the limp subtle but telling. Her name was Luna. Luna didn't bolt like strays usually did. Instead, she stood still on the gravel shoulder, watching Clara approach. There was no aggression in her stance, but neither was there trust. Harry's, deep, dark, and rimmed with exhaustion, locked on two, Clara's in the way of someone weighing a choice. Clara eased the patrol car to the side of the road, shifting into park. She kept her hands visible as she stepped out, her boots crunching against the frozen dirt. "Hey there, girl," she called softly, her voice low and steady. The cold air carried, her words forward in a slow drift. Luna didn't move at first, but her ears twitched toward Clara's voice. She took in the uniform, the posture, the distance. She had seen humans before and learned to measure them carefully. Clara took one slow step forward. Luna's muscles tightened, but she didn't retreat. The air between them felt taut, as though it could snap with the wrong move. Then, without warning, Luna turned her head and began to walk away slowly, down a faint path that cut into the frost-dusted grass. Luna stopped halfway down the narrow path, her paws pressing into the cold, unyielding ground. Her breath came fast and shallow, small clouds curling in the morning air. She turned her head toward Clara, and in that single glance, the weight of her need was impossible to miss. She wanted Clara to follow. She needed her to. Then a sound, low, rough, and trembling, broke from her throat. One single bark. It wasn't sharp or hostile. It was the kind of sound that carried a piece of the soul with it, a plea. But almost as quickly as it came, doubt slipped back into her eyes. Her tail hung low. Her muscles stayed taut. She shifted her weight, taking half a step toward Clara before, retreating again, her head lowering as if caught between instinct and memory. Somewhere behind those eyes, Clara could almost feel the shadows. Nights left out in the cold, the sting of being abandoned, the moment when the own person you trusted most turned away. Luna had learned that people could walk into your life and still choose to leave. And yet here she was standing on this path, hoping against every hard lesson that maybe this human would be different. Clara crouched slightly, softening her voice against the chill. "It's okay. I'm here to help you." The words hung in the air between them. Luna's ears twitched, her gaze steady but guarded. Slowly, she turned toward the path ahead, glancing back one more time. It wasn't just a look. It was a question, a test. Clara took a slow step forward. This time, Luna moved, not with trust, not yet, but with the fragile courage of someone who wanted to believe. The path narrowed as Luna led Clara deeper into the overgrown lot. Dead grass brushed against Clara's boots, brittle under the weight of frost. The air grew still, almost heavy, as if the world was holding its breath. Luna slowed, her steps becoming more deliberate. Her ears twitched at the faint rustle of leaves, but her eyes never left the spot ahead. Clara followed her gaze and saw it. Half hidden behind a stack of rotting timber sat a soggy cardboard box, its sides caved in from the damp. The edges were darkened with mud. The lid slightly collapsed. Luna stopped in front of it, her body blocking Clara's view. She stood rigid, her tail low but not tucked, the muscles along her shoulder stents. Then, with a quiet whine, she stepped aside. Clara knelt, the cold seeping through her knees as she peered inside. Her chest tightened. 6 tiny German Shepherd puppies lay huddled together, their fur matted, their bodies trembling against the bite of the cold. A few whimpered weakly, others barely moved at all. Their breaths came in shallow, uneven puffs, little clouds that vanished almost as soon as they formed. The smell of damp cardboard, sour milk, and desperation clung to the air. Clara's throat constricted, a wave of anger and grief colliding in her chest. She looked up at Luna, who now stood over the box, her head lowered toward her pups. The fear in her eyes hadn't left, but there was something else now, a flicker of hope. "You brought me here for them?" Clara murmured, her voice almost breaking. Luna's gaze locked with hers, steady and unblinking. And in that moment, Clara understood. This wasn't a random meeting on a lonely road. This was a mother's last gamble. Clara's training kicked in, but her hands still trembled as she reached for her coat. One by one, she lifted the fragile bodies from the box, wrapping them into the thick folds of fabric. Each pup was lighter than it should have been, their tiny bones pressing against her palms. The faint warmth of their bodies was slipping away, and with it, precious time. Luna stepped forward immediately, hovering close. Her head darted between Clara's hands and the puppy's, eyes sharp with the kind of vigilance only a mother could have. When Clara moved to pick up the last pup, Luna gave a low warning rumble. Not out of aggression, but out of instinct. "It's all right," Clara murmured, meeting her gaze. "I've got him." For a heartbeat, Luna hesitated. Then, with a slow blink, she stepped aside, falling into stride beside Clara. As they made their way back toward the patrol car, the air bit at Clara's face, and the frosty ground crunched under her boots. She moved quickly but carefully, the bundle of shivering bodies clutched tight against her chest. Reaching the car, she opened the rear door and laid the pups on the seat, tucking her coat around them to trap whatever heat she could. "Come on, girl," she urged softly. Una hesitated at the edge of the road, her gaze sweeping the empty fields as if, still expecting danger to come. Then she leapt up into the back, curling herself protectively around her pups. Clara slid into the driver's seat, flicking on the heater until the vents blasted warm air into the cabin. She grabbed the radio mic voice. Steady, but urgent. "Dispatch, this is Hayes. I'm en route to the Animal Rescue Center with an adult canine and 6 neonates. Critical condition. Tell them to prep for immediate intake." She threw the car into gear, the tires spitting gravel as they sped toward the only chance. This little family had left. The Animal Rescue Center came into view, a squat brick building at the edge of town, its windows glowing against the pale morning. Clara barely had the car in park before the front doors burst open, and 2 veterinary techs rushed out, arms laden with blankets. "They're hypothermic," Clara called as she opened the back door. 6 pups, 1 adult female, malnourished and dehydrated. The techs didn't waste a second. One gathered the bundled puppies from the back seat, tucking them into pre-warmed blankets. The other knelt beside Luna, speaking in a soft, coaxing tone. Luna's ears flicked back, but her eyes never left her pups as she allowed herself to be led inside. Clara followed them down the hall into the main treatment room. The space was bright under harsh fluorescent lights, smelling faintly of antiseptic and wet fur. The team moved with quiet urgency, laying the pups onto heat pads, slipping tiny IV lines into their legs, checking each for signs of dehydration and hypoglycemia. Luna stayed close, pacing restlessly beside the table, her head darting toward whichever pup whimpered the loudest. When a tech reached for her to check her own vitals, she hesitated, torn between protecting her young and allowing these strangers near. "It's okay," Clara said softly from the corner, her voice steady but warm. "They're helping." Whether it was thetone or the presence of her pups, Luna finally settled, letting the vet examine her. Beneath the matted fur, Clara Ara could see the jut of bone at her hips, the rough scars along her side. Minutes felt like hours, but eventually the pups' shivers eased, their breathing steadied. Luna lay beside them on a padded mat, her nose touching the edge of the heat pad, as if she could warm them with her own breath. Only then did Clara feel the tight knot in her chest begin to loosen just enough to breathe. The next morning, Clara was back at their rescue center. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the image of Luna curled protectively around her pups, eyes hollow yet unwilling to give up. A vet tech met her in the lobby holding a clipboard. "We scanned her microchip," she said. "It's registered to an Ethan and Sophia Marshall. Address is about 8 MN from where you found them." The house was easy to find, a sagging porch peeling paint and weeds climbing over the fence. It looked tired, unloved, much like the dog she'd pulled from the cold. Next door, an older woman was raking leaves. At the mention of a German shepherd, her eyes softened. Oh, she belonged to Sophia. The neighbor said, "That dog adored her and Sophia. She treated her like family." The woman's voice faltered. Then one night, there was shouting. I don't know what about, but Sophia left in her car. She never came back. After that, Ethan, well, he started drinking a lot. I didn't see him walk the dog anymore. She just faded. Clara thanked her and crossed the yard to knock on Ethan's door. He answered with bloodshot eyes and the sour smell of alcohol hanging in the air. At the mention of Luna and the pups, he gave a short, humorless laugh. Those dogs were nothing but trouble. "If you think you can take care of her, then go ahead," he said flatly, like he was handing off a broken piece of furniture. The words hit Clara like a blow to the sternum, cold, sharp, and without mercy. For a moment, she just stared at him, trying to understand how someone could speak so casually about abandoning a living soul. Her jaw locked, the muscles in her face tightening as heat surged up her neck. It wasn't just the neglect that sickened her. It was the sheer emptiness in his voice. The way Luna's life and the lives of her pups meant less to him than the empty bottle slittering. His floor, disgust and anger tangled in her chest, but beneath them lay something deeper. She didn't bother to respond. Turning back to her car, she gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went pale. If Luna could still risk trusting a human after being cast aside like that, Clara knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to let that trust go unanswered. That evening, Clara drove back to Rescue Center. The day's patrol was over, but her thoughts had never strayed far from Luna and the pups. The memory of Ethan's flat, careless words still burned in her chest. The moment she stepped inside, she saw them. Luna lay curled on a padded blanket, her body wrapped protectively around the 6 pups. Their small bellies rose and fell in the gentle rhythm of sleep. Tiny paws, twitching as they dreamed. Luna's ears flicked as Clara approached. Her head lifted, and for a moment their eyes locked. No growl, no retreat. Just a steady, watchful gaze. Clara lowered herself to the floor, resting an arm on her knee. "Hey, girl," she said softly. "They're safe now." One of the pups stirred, stretching a paw over its sibling before nestling closer to Luna's chest. Clara's gaze lingered on the little bundle of lives that had almost ended in a damp, forgotten box. She'd thought of the silence in her own home, the empty dinner table, the absence of voices that used to fill the rooms. 4 years, she'd avoided letting anyone or anything close enough to stay. But here they were, 7 souls who had already fought their way into her heart without asking permission. The decision came without ceremony, but with the weight of something irreversible. Clara reached out, letting her hand rest gently on Luna's back. "You don't have to wonder anymore," she murmured. "I'm not going anywhere." Luna didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she lowered her head onto Clara's knee, the warmth of her trust seeping into the space between them. It wasn't just rescue. It was the start of something neither of them had expected, but both needed. A week later, the paperwork was signed. Clara left the Rescue Center with Luna walking calmly at her side, a sturdy harness snug against her chest. Behind them, a carrier in the back seat cradled 6 lively pups, their yips and whines blending into a chaotic chorus. The drive home was short, but Clara kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Luna sat upright, watching the road ahead, her ears flicking. Each time one of the pups squeaked. She didn't seem afraid anymore. Alert, yes, but grounded, as if she'd finally decided this was the road worth following. Clara's small cabin waited at the edge of town, surrounded by tall pines and the scent of fresh hearth. It had been silent for too long, a place to retreat from the world, but never to feel alive. It changed the moment she opened the front door. The pups tumbled across the threshold, sniffing every corner, tripping over their own feet. Luna stepped in more slowly, taking in the space, her nose tracing the air before she turned to watch her pups claim it as their own. Clara stood in the doorway, leaning on the frame for armament. The room felt different already, warmer, fuller, as if the air itself had shifted. She'd brought them here to give them a home, but it was her own heart that felt reclaimed. By evening, the pups had worn themselves out and collapsed in a heap on a soft blanket by the hearth. Luna settled beside them, her eyes half closed, the faintest sigh escaping her chest. Clara lowered herself to the floor, one hand resting on Luna's shoulder. "We're a family now," she whispered. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines. Inside, for the first time in years, Clara didn't feel alone.